Hi, everybody, and welcome to those of you in the room and to those of you joining by Zoom. This is the regular City Council meeting for November 10th. In lieu of an invocation today, I'm actually going to take the liberty of reading a proclamation related to Veterans Day, which we will follow by the Pledge of Allegiance and then the roll call. So as everyone knows, tomorrow is Veterans Day. And I signed this proclamation today. And it says, whereas on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918, World War I ended by the heroic and selfless acts of our nation's brave service members, as well as those from around the world. And whereas in 1954, President Dwight D. Eisenhower commemorated these service members and this great armistice by proclaiming November 11th as Veterans Day to honor all men and women who served our nation in uniform throughout the history of our republic. And whereas the city of Boise is fortunate to be home to a diverse population of courageous service members, and Matt in the room, I know you're a veteran, who encapsulate the highest values of cooperation and service, which they learned in uniform but bring to our community to serve all members of the city. And whereas the city of Boise is fortunate to have veterans who continue a life of service working and volunteering within our city staff. And whereas we also recognize these Americans could not operate alone, and we extend our deepest and sincerest gratitude to these patriots' families, the love and support you offer makes us all better. And whereas we are reminded every day of our obligation to thank the women and men in uniform for their service, we are eternally grateful to those of you who have served, those of you who are serving, for your courage, duty, and service to our country. And therefore, I, Lauren McLean, Mayor of City of Boise, do hereby proclaim November 11th, 2020 as Veterans Day in the City of Boise. And we welcome our residents to honor and thank the veterans in our community for their commitment to our safety and the sacrifices that each of you have made to our country. Thank you, all of you. And with that, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And clerk, will you please call the roll?
Agent,
Here.
Clegg,
Here.
Halliburton,
Here.
Sanchez,
Here.
Thompson,
Here.
Woodings,
Here.
all present.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I have a motion. I move to defer CPA 20-1, a comp plan amendment to a date certain of December 8th, 2020.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Agent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. And next up, I'll take my mask off for a second. Under special business, first we have the appointment of Mark Niemeyer as chief of, oh wait, no, I'm sorry, we have minutes. Sorry about that, Council President.
Madam Mayor, I move we approve the City Council minutes of the regular day meeting of October 27th, 2020.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson. Okay.
DJ, you're muted.
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Agent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton,
Yes.
all in favor, motion carries.
Madam Mayor? Before we
Yes.
move on real quick, just in the same lines as your wonderful proclamation for Veterans Day, I just want to commend our own City Council veteran, Councilmember Thompson, as part of that as well.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your service. I was thinking the same about to say, so thanks for saying that, President Pro Tem. And we have, how many vets in the room? Are you a vet? Nope. Oh, you are. Yes, we've got the one that I mentioned in the, when reading the proclamation. You were not listed in the proclamation, but I saw you there and thought that I should give a nod to you. That's Matt from CCDC is in the room. Okay, so next up, we have the appointment of Mark Niemeyer as Fire Chief, effective November 30th, 2020. Just in introducing Mark, of course, you're the current Fire Chief of Meridian, and you've overseen their emergency response and worked closely with us and other governments during these COVID emergencies since January, at least, is when I first started working with you. A couple things that I wanted to just say in introducing Mark is that, and it was the mayor of Nampa that told me that, this process was different. It wasn't what everyone expected. It wasn't what I expected. And Debbie said to me, though, that a process works when the person that has to make a hiring decision goes through a process, talks to people that have applied, talks to her team of people that have to work with that person, hears from the community and learns from it. And ultimately, I believe that while it wasn't what any of us expected, that process did work because it helped me better understand that we need partnership, that our employees and department leaders wanted a partner, that our firefighters and deputy chiefs wanted someone to work with to mentor them, that regionally, and we heard in the COVID presentation today, how important regional relationships are, and the connection of emergency response to police response to fire response, and how it's so important that all of those work seamlessly, both during times of crisis, but well into the future as we usher in a 21st century fire department. And in Mark, I see someone that will be a true partner to our department heads, that will bring our one city, one team for the greatest good belief, both as an advocate for the men and women on the line in the fire department, for the leadership in the fire department, and then ultimately as an effective advocate because he will partner with our other department heads in a time when budgets are tight and we're going to have to make more tough decisions. That becomes even more important in order for one to be an effective advocate for their department. You've shown in your work that regional relationships matter, and I really appreciate the feedback I've received from so many about how pleased they are that I have named a chief, hopefully with confirmation tonight, that will make good on a promise that I made during my campaign, which was to strengthen those relationships throughout this valley, because so goes the valley, so goes the city. I believe that Mark will be a leader within the department and a support to our deputy chiefs, as well as the men and women on the line. And in conversations both with the union and the deputy leadership within the department, they see that too. And I really look forward to having that alignment. I mentioned the importance of advocacy and playing the role of a member of our departments in the one city, one team perspective, and I believe you bring that too. And with that, I'd like to introduce Mark for conversation here amongst the council members, and really appreciate your interest and willingness to serve our community. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
is it appropriate to start this with a motion and then have the discussion?
Sure.
Okay, I would move that we confirm Mark Niemeyer as Chief of our Fire Department for the City of Boise, effective November 30th, 2020.
Second.
We have a motion and 2 seconds. The record can reflect them both.
Madam Mayor, if I could. So I'm going to repeat what I said for the paper, that I am delighted that Mark Niemeyer is interested in being the fire chief for the City of Boise. I've had the opportunity to serve with him on the Joint Powers Agreement Board that does coordination of services for EMS services, and in that role have watched him as the administrative chair of the subcommittee on administration for that organization, really, as the mayor said, lead by example, lead by gathering good data, showing the evidence, and bringing the often split sides together to try and find a solution to some really tough issues of how do you coordinate between 9 agencies across Ada County to provide the best most effective, most efficient emergency services, especially on the medical side, that we can. And I've been impressed with the work that he did there. Having said that, I, like many, are not pleased that the process itself didn't yield the winning candidate. I think we all looked forward to working through that process and finding the person. But as the mayor said, I think that process did yield the fact that the candidates who came forward were not quite the right fit, but that we could determine from that what the right fit was. And I'm convinced that Mark is that. I know that there are people who are disappointed that in bringing Mark forward, instead of going back and having another process, the mayor acted quickly. I would agree that I'll take a little bit of blame myself for not pushing for maybe a little bit different way to announce it. And I would suggest that maybe the mayor has some blame on that and that we'll all get better. You know, I think it's Councilmember Sanchez who said many times, this job doesn't come with any training. You just get to get up here and do the best you can. And hopefully your experience and your instincts lead you to that. I think ultimately what it led to was a really good candidate. And so for those reasons, I'm very supportive. I've also noted that the mayor wanted to bring this hastily for some good reasons. I've talked to her about it. I've talked to Mark about it. We are in the middle, as we heard earlier tonight, of the worst surge in COVID cases that we've had yet. Our fire department over the last 8 months has been stretched thin working to deal with the COVID cases we already had. The command staff there has been stretched thin in working out of position and trying to respond to lead this department. They've done an incredibly good job, but I know from having talked to them that they're tired and they're looking forward to having a leader at the top. In addition, we have some budget issues that need some immediate attention. This is not going to be an easy budget year. And if we don't have a commander in the fire department who can be at the table with our other executive management team now to begin working on the compromises and the trades and the trade-offs that we're going to have to make this budget work, the fire department will be less well served than they might be. And so for those reasons, I believe the mayor was right in bringing forward a candidate quickly, despite the disappointment many of us have in wanting maybe a little bit different process to get to that candidate. And then finally, I would say this, in talking to Mark, he talked about his commitment to work with the union, to do that by building relationships, to do that by sitting down at the table with them and sitting down beside them and finding the common ground. He also made a commitment to do the same with the leadership of the city, not just the EMT staff, but also the city council and of course the mayor. And I believe can act as a bridge between all of those forces, just as I've seen him act as that bridge at the JPA board meetings. And so I am very supportive of confirming Mark today and hope that it will be a really good day for the city going forward. I think the fire department will be well served. I think the command staff also has a commitment from him to build a scaffolding of leadership behind himself so that our fire department will be left stronger when he does leave, whenever that is. So for all of those reasons, that's why I made the motion and am supporting it tonight.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not going to beat the dead horse on the process stuff. I think that we all wish that we had a different process, but I am going to give a little bit of insight into why I was especially disappointed in it. And I think it's because with the way that this was announced, we never had the chance and the opportunity to really objectively evaluate Mr. Niemeyer's qualifications and his work history and his expertise. And that's because at that point, when it's already been introduced to the community, you can't separate any of those things from the human factors and the very real implications of making any decision other than to confirm. So that's what kept me up at night for the past week. Really weighing that and making sure that we're making a really good decision, because we as City Council are entrusted with the public's resources and with taxpayer money, and with keeping our community safe by use of those funds. The Boise Fire Department is a $59 million department, and that's a lot of money. That's a lot of frontline staff. That's a lot of hardworking firefighters. And we need to make sure that we have a capable, conscientious chief who has a proven track record of ethical leadership, integrity, and the ability to protect the public safety and trust. I don't feel like I was able to answer those questions in the way that I wanted to, but I have been assured, and I know all City Council members have been assured by Mayor McLean that her process has given her the confidence in the selection of Chief Niemeyer to lead our fire department and to uphold that public trust. So with that in mind, Chief Niemeyer, I look forward to working with you in your new role. And I look forward to working with you to keep our frontline firefighters safe, to keep our community safe, and to keep the city of Boise the wonderful place that we know and love. And I also want to thank Interim Chief Gervais for all of his dedicated service during this time. I know it's been a huge sacrifice for him and his family. So thank you so much, Interim Chief, for getting us through this. I appreciate it.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I also wanted to start by thanking Interim Chief Romeo Grebe. It's not an easy thing to do to step in immediately like that, and it was extremely impressive to see your work. And over 9 months now, you've done the job, and I think it's going to serve you well and the entire department well with all you've done and achieved for the city. Thank you, Romeo. Also, I want to note, when it comes to police and fire, my love and support for these departments in particular runs deep. I have fire red and police blue lines on my heart, and I mean that. I love these departments, and I love to see what's the very, very best for these departments. I was very proud to see the choice for the chief of police, who's done an outstanding job. And while I've worked a bit with Chief Niemeyer to some degree, but mostly through observation and what I've heard from others of his work, and what I've heard since of his work since being nominated for this position, I am thoroughly impressed. It's rare that you can bring someone to this position that is already serving in the position for a very quality period of time in the second largest city in the state of Idaho. And I'm proud to see that. I think that Council President Clegg stated it well in terms of the COVID. Immense importance to get a leader at the top that is filled, that's a permanent leader at the top that everyone knows is there to stay during this worst epidemic of our lifetime. And one thing that I've heard over this period of time since Mark has been nominated has been his response to COVID, and that weighs heavy on my decision as well. And I will full-heartedly be supporting this move. I wish Chief Niemeyer the very best. We look forward to working with you. I'm very happy for your wife, Cheryl, and your 2 kids. And I see that you have children that also are in similar fields of, I believe it was nursing and fire. That's really neat. You've obviously rubbed off on them. So I will be supporting the decision and look forward to working with you. Thank you, Mark.
Madam Mayor,
Go ahead.
I had the opportunity to meet with Chief Niemeyer for the first time last week, and a couple of things struck me in that meeting. The first was that he was a thoughtful person who engaged with the questions that I was asking and gave thoughtful answers, and that is surprisingly rare, and I really appreciated that. In that meeting, he spoke with me about his career goals and his career past, almost in the same sentence that he spoke about the effects of his decision on his family, on his spouse, and on his children. And it was clear to me that he weighed those things in his mind at the same time. He was capable of thinking about very difficult things and holding them in his mind at the same time. And I appreciated that. He also spoke with me in the same sentences, in the same paragraphs as budgetary matters relating to mutual aid and issues we're dealing with, particularly on the perimeter of our city, about what he felt were moral commitments and moral obligations that communities owe one another, and that the leader of a department like a fire department owes not only to the citizens of the community that pay its taxes, but to the adjoining citizens. And he explained his view on that without apologizing. He said, for me, it comes down to this, and I guess others could disagree, but this is how I view this. And that was candid, frank. He wasn't fishing for the answer that he thought that I would like to hear, and I appreciated that. In that meeting, I also asked him, I think, 3 very difficult questions, very pointed questions, questions that were bothering me, and I know were bothering others, questions that came up as a result, to some extent, of the process that appointed him. And he answered each of those questions directly and frankly, in an honest, straightforward, this is the answer kind of way. And I appreciated that. I have no doubts about this gentleman's integrity. I have no doubts about this gentleman's ability to articulate what he believes in and defend it. And I have no doubts about this gentleman's ability to question his own beliefs, engage with questions that he's asked, and reevaluate whether he's going the right direction. Those are all incredible qualities. And so I'm happy to support him. I'm not as sanguine about the process that got us here as the mayor is, and as the mayor of a neighboring community appears to be. It's not my process. I don't hire the gentleman. I confirm him if he's a good candidate, and he is. I'm grateful and I'm happy to do so. And I'm certainly looking forward to working with him for hopefully many years.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
First.
And then Jimmy, you're next.
First, I would like to thank Mr. Niemeyer for correcting me. I kept calling him the wrong name.
That's right.
And I appreciate that, because, I mean, that sounds like a small thing, but it's not. How many of us have had those moments, those faux pas, you know, where you're walking around with something in your teeth or something on your sweater, and you get home and you realize that people saw that and nobody said anything to you. So that indicated a little bit to me of the kind of person you are, Mark. I too enjoyed my conversation with Mr. Niemeyer, and you know, one thing that I enjoyed about this process was that I got to be a part of the process, and I got to learn a lot about what it involves being a fire chief. This happens to come at a time in our city's history where, in this organization, we are making bold steps when it comes to issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so who comes on board in a leadership role is really important in terms of how they prioritize those issues. Our staff that has participated in the training thus far has been very committed. It's very vulnerable work. They say it takes strength to make yourself vulnerable, to do an assessment to determine what your current mindset is. And so in what the small amount of time that we had to chat, we did that, Mark and I. And Mark admitted that he does not have a mastery yet when it comes to issues of DEI, but that he's committed to learning. And And that gives me hope for our community and for our city, for us as an organization, that we have people who are humble enough to say, I don't know, but I'm willing to learn. We need more of that, actually. And so I shared that with the mayor, with council president, and said that, I recognize that two of our largest departments, BFD and BPD, them getting it right when it comes to that particular skill is important. And that it's a commitment that I've made while I'm on council, that I would like to see that work, that mastery become something that becomes part of our DNA, that there is no interaction that a staff member with the city of Boise would have with each other or with a member of the community that is not through that lens of DEI. And so I think I was made to feel better about the fact that Mr. Niemeyer didn't go through the same process that we had in talking to other candidates when I asked if I could have a deeper relationship with BFD as one of the liaisons to accompany Councilman Bajan as a liaison. And so with that in mind, I welcome you. I'm so happy for you. And I hope that you and your family, even though you're not going to live in Boise, that you will come to embrace it as your home as well.
Go ahead,
Madam Mayor.
Councilman Halliburton. Yep.
Thank you. I'm going to try to make this pretty quick. I do want to add some praise to Chief Romeo. I think during really hard times, leaders step up when you need them the most. And I think that thanks from all of our city council members to you is real. So thank you for taking on that role during this time when we really needed you. And I also want to thank all my other council members for really doing their due diligence and taking the time to talk with Chief Niemeyer. I wasn't part of the hiring committee. I know other folks were. So I can't really comment on the process other than I've hired a lot of people in my other job, and I'm yet to find a process that's always identified the perfect candidate in a linear fashion. But I also believe that there's nothing that we can't do better. That's one of our city's mottos and something that we have to live by. I really enjoyed my conversation with Chief Niemeyer. I used to work at the Eagle Fire Department, both as a volunteer and picking up shifts over there. And one of the qualities that I always saw in good leadership were people who really listened, but also listened and followed up with good questions, people who could really put the team ahead of themselves, and people who knew that building community meant beyond just your immediate team, but the folks in general. And I was really impressed with Chief Niemeyer's willingness and desire to do that, not only with the community members of Boise, but also our neighboring cities, and making sure that we're putting public safety, no matter where those lines are, at our very top priority. So this is a very easy decision for me. I'm excited to vote to confirm, and congratulations, Chief.
All right, with that, I think everybody, am I cutting anybody off? So let's actually do a vote, and then I'll just say something before Mark comes up. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Agent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Well, thank you all, and congratulations, Mark. Please, you're welcome to say a couple things. While you're coming up, I want to say that I don't know if Romeo was watching tonight or not. Councilman Halliburton is so right. Like, people rise to the occasion when they must, and Romeo has truly done that. But I got to tell you, folks, he cannot wait to get out of Dodge. So that's why I don't know if he's actually here. He's probably, oh, there he is. There he is.
Yes, there.
Thank you, Romeo. Mark will start working on November 30th, and we're working right now on a swearing in date that will be a small gathering in person, but filmed and available for people to see. I believe we're looking at December 7th, that Monday right now, mainly because Romeo's getting out of Dodge, and we want to make sure that he is with us so that we can do a proper thanks as well as a welcome at the same time with your family, and then recognize Romeo for all that he's done to serve the city these last several months. So welcome, Mark, and congratulations.
Madam Mayor, members of council, thank you and good evening. And I'm going to go off script just a little bit here and thank Chief Gervais. I know stepping into an interim role is very hard. I know as I stepped up into emergency operations for the city of Meridian, one of my deputy chiefs stepped in as the interim, and after a couple of weeks called and said, I don't know if I like your job. And so certainly what Romeo has done, a lot of good conversations that I've had with him. I am honored and humbled for this confirmation and to be the next fire chief for the city of Boise and the Boise Fire Department. I'm greatly looking forward to working with the mayor, the city leadership team, the members of the fire department, and especially the community to talk about how we can provide even better excellence in service. And that's really what we are. We are in service as a fire department, and I take that pride and that direction very seriously, and I'm looking forward to that. I want to thank you, Mayor McLean, personally, for the many conversations we had leading up to this confirmation. You made me and my family feel like this is a great fit with the vision for the city and the one city, one team philosophy. It's what I'm used to and it's what I gravitate to. And I think this is a terrific fit for both me and my family. So I want to thank you for that. I do want to thank the members of the fire department I had a chance to engage with, including the e-board of Local 149. I'm looking forward to working within the department, bringing my 29 years of experience in public safety to that team and working together to find great solutions for the challenges that we face ahead. I do believe strongly in collaboration. I talked to many of you throughout this process about that. I believe strongly in it within the department, within the city, and within the community. I have for the last 10 years enjoyed a terrific relationship between the police department and the fire department. And I'm certainly looking forward to meeting with Chief Lee, talking about how police and fire can work together for the betterment of the community, working with the other city departments as well, and then working with our public safety partners like we've done for so many years. Certainly the greatest threat that we face is amongst us still, and it's been alluded to, and that's COVID. This threat is real, and it's going to continue to be real. And certainly for the firefighters, they are on the front lines of this. Every day they're going out and responding potentially to somebody with COVID, sometimes seriously. So our commitment is that we will continue to respond regardless of the dangers it presents. We'll continue to certainly protect the health and safety, both physical and mental, of our firefighters. Healthcare fatigue is a real thing right now, and that includes the pre-hospital environment, the police officers, the firefighters, the paramedics that are responding every day to this threat. It is with our leadership and the community support that we can mitigate this issue and get back to life as normal. And it's going to take a lot of work to do that, but I look forward to bringing that level of expertise to the city of Boise as well. Madam Mayor, members of council, I'll keep this brief. For those of you that know me, you know I can talk forever, and I won't do that tonight. I do want to thank you. My family thanks you, and I certainly look forward to getting to work.
Thank you very much. And congratulations. And you were free to leave. You do not have to sit through a meeting. We're looking forward to working with you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you, Chief Niemeyer. And thank you, Interim Chief Romeo Gervais. You have been just a wonderful interim chief. Really appreciate it.
Great. Have a great night. We'll see you soon. Okay, next up is, could you actually take over just for a couple minutes? Yeah, I'll just introduce this resolution. I believe is just, now we're in the standard updating mode. And so we've had past 30 days, so we needed to update this with any changes that had been made locally, but I believe it was an extension.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. As we heard earlier tonight, COVID has not only not gone away, but has gotten stronger, and even more need to have this public health emergency order. And with that, I would move approval of the reissuance of Public Health Emergency Order 2012-B.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Agent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. And with that, we are on to item 6, which is the consent agenda. All items with an asterisk are considered to be routine by the council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate motion or discussion on these items unless a council member or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the general order of business and considered in its normal sequence.
Second.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
And Councilmember Sanchez second. Any discussion? Hearing none, would the clerk please call the roll?
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Agent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
And if you'll give me just a moment, I'm going to pass this script to Councilmember Sanchez. All right, and now we are on to item 7, ordinances, the reading of ordinances. There are a number of ordinances on the first reading calendar tonight. These are routine amendments to our building and electrical codes. And while we will not be having a public hearing on them, this is only the first reading, and there is time for anyone to give us comment before we get to the third reading calendar. With that, I would move to the first reading calendar.
I ask unanimous consent that all ordinances on first reading be read by number and title only and filed for the second reading calendar.
Without objection.
ORD-39-20, an ordinance amending Boise City Code Title 9, Chapter 1, Boise City Building Code, to adopt the 2018 International Building Code, including Appendix H, signs, Appendix J, grading, and certain amendments to Appendix J, grading, standardizing and correcting terminology, numbering and code references, updating fee schedule references, flood hazard maps, and flood hazard regulations, and separating the Boise City Building Code into commercial and residential subsections, approving a summary of the ordinance, and providing an effective date. ORD-40-20, an ordinance amending Boise City Code Title 9, Chapter 1, Boise City Building Code, to adopt the 2018 International Residential Code, including Manual J design criteria, standardizing and correcting terminology, numbering, and code references, updating fee schedule references, flood hazard maps, and flood hazard regulations, including Appendix Q, tiny houses, and Appendix S, straw bale construction, and separating the Boise City Building Code into commercial and residential subsections, approving a summary of the ordinance, and providing an effective date. ORD-41-20, an ordinance amending Boise City Code Title 9, Chapter 10, Boise City Building Code, to adopt the 2018 International Existing Building Code, which establishes alternative methods and minimum requirements for work associated with existing structures, approving a summary of the ordinance, and providing an effective date. ORD-42-20, an ordinance amending Boise City Code Title 9, Chapter 9, Boise City Energy Conservation Code, to adopt the 2018 International Energy Conservation Code, associated required state amendments, approving a summary of the ordinance, and providing an effective date. ORD-43-20, an ordinance repealing and replacing the Boise City Electrical Code, Boise City Code Title 9, Chapter 5, adopting updated administrative provisions, designating the code official, updating Electrical Board of Appeals duties and procedures, establishing criteria for modifications, alternative materials and designs, defining work exempt for permits, requiring dedicated branch circuit that may be used for electric vehicle charging in residential garage built in conjunction with new construction, approving a summary of the ordinance, and providing an effective date. ORD-44-20, an ordinance CAR 20-00010 for property located at 1976 South Century Way, amending zoning classifications of the city of Boise City to change the classification of real property particularly described in Section 1 of this ordinance from limited office with design review L-OD to light industrial with design review M-1D, setting forth a reasoned statement in support of such zone change and providing an effective date. ORD-46-20, an ordinance amending Boise City Code Title 1, Chapter 16, to allow for the inclusion of temporary expansions of alcohol license premises to be included on license renewal applications as directed by ABC. To clarify, the city's authorization to temporarily expand alcohol license premises shall end at the sunset date or upon notification from ABC, whichever comes first. To extend the automatic sunset provision to April 30th, 2022, and provide an effective date.
Thank you. That was a lot of reading. All right, next up, we've got the second reading calendar.
Madam Mayor, I ask unanimous consent that all ordinances on the second reading calendar be read by number and title only and filed for the third reading calendar.
Second.
Without objection.
ORD 37-20, an ordinance CAR 19-00021 for property located at 1101 South Denver Avenue, 1108 South Grant Avenue, 1116 West Beacon Street, and 1105 South Manitou Avenue, amending zoning classifications of the city of Boise City to change the classification of real property particularly described in section 1 of this ordinance from medium-density residential R-2 to University District U, setting forth a reasoned statement in support of such zone change and provide an effective date. ORD 38-20, an ordinance CAR 20-00009 for property located at 1709 and 1711 South Federal Way, amending zoning classifications of the city of Boise City to change the classification of real property particularly described in section 1 of this ordinance from medium-density residential R-2 to multifamily residential with design review R-3D, setting forth a reasoned statement in support of such zone change and provide an effective date.
Thank you. And next up, we've got third reading.
Madam Mayor, I move that further reading of ordinance 34-20 be dispensed with and the record reflect that it has been read the third time in full.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Regent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
ORD 34-20, an ordinance CAR 19-00031 for property located at 511 North Maple Grove Road, amending zoning classifications of the city of Boise City to change the classification of real property particularly described in section 1 of this ordinance from light industrial with design review M-1D to neighborhood commercial with design review and development agreement C-1DDA, setting forth a reasoned statement in support of such zone change and provide an effective date.
Madam Mayor, I move that ordinance 34-20 be approved.
Second.
Sorry, we have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Regent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. All right, next up, we have new business. And under new business, first, we have one subdivision. Let's see, before we get going, I don't see, so we've got a couple people, I imagine, Eric Wilson, I think that's Brandon Eric Wilson, right? So I imagine that Eric Wilson is online. Emmy Lee? Is it Yonghoon Lim? Okay, these three folks must be online. Are any of you here for this? Great. All right, we've got one person here for this in person, Heather Richards. Great. Okay, so for subdivisions and public hearings, we have some people in the room, others will be online. And so for each of these, I'll start first with seeing who's in the room. We'll go through anyone that's here to testify on any of these matters, and then we'll jump online to see who's waiting. And so for each of the items, if you're here, just raise your Zoom hand and we'll be sure to call on you. And with that, Cody, I'll have you kick us off with the subdivision.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. This item is a request to vacate a plat note from the Riverland Terrace subdivision that's located near the city's boundary out along Warm Springs Avenue. The purpose of the request is actually to increase the number of access points to Warm Springs Avenue itself. As indicated in the packet, this isn't generally something we would support. We do always look for ways to minimize access to an arterial roadway like this. But in this instance, there really isn't a lot in the way of viable options. The two parcels in question actually housed wells for the 31 lot subdivision. And those wells have been abandoned, so the subdivision is planning to connect to the public water system. To fund those connections or fund the connections to that system, the applicant has asked to sell these lots for the purpose of residential development. If the lots are to be used for homes, they will need access to Warm Springs. We actually looked a little bit at an opportunity to use, for say common drives or shared access, and with existing construction, it just wasn't feasible. Thus the request to vacate the plat note. As indicated in your packet, ACHD has indicated support of the request if on-site turnarounds are provided on each of the lots. With that, we are unaware of opposition to the request, And with those turnarounds, we believe the safety concerns can be mitigated. Given that there aren't a lot of other options in this case for these very unique parcels, we are recommending approval of the application this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Cody. And Ms. Richards, you as the applicant, are you here? If you've got more to add, are you in agreement with the staff report? Okay. Okay, great. And if the record would reflect the applicant's in agreement with the staff report, are there any questions for staff? Nope. All right. I do have 3 people listed, Eric, Emmy, and then I'm really sorry, Young Yoon, maybe? If you'll raise your hands, we'll call on you.
Madam Mayor, Eric Wilson has been promoted to a panelist. so
Oh,
he's
great.
there.
Hi, Eric. Welcome.
Good evening, and I have nothing to add, and just thank you for this opportunity, and we look forward to moving on to a new phase in our subdivision.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I don't believe I have anyone else.
All right. If the record would reflect nobody else is currently here for this item, I imagine there are still no questions for staff. All right, I'll close the hearing.
Madam Mayor.
ahead.
I move approval of SOS 20-28 Riverland Terrace Corporation request to vacate a plat note limiting the number of access points to East Warm Springs Avenue for Riverland Terrace subdivision.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Begin,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Hallie Burton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. All right, the first public hearing has been deferred by motion earlier in the evening. So next up, we have CAR 20-11 on South Robert Street. And with this one, we have Cody presenting for staff. Ben Semple, I imagine, is online. We have nobody signed up in advance, so just anybody here for this one? Great. Just a warning, if anybody's on Zoom for this one, be sure to get your hands up because we didn't have any advance signups. With that, Cody, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. This is a request to rezone a roughly 1/4 acre parcel from C2D or general commercial with design review to RODDA or residential office with design review and a development agreement. The property is addressed at 1511 South Robert Street. For those unfamiliar with the area, it's just northeast of the Vista and Overland intersection, a community activity center. The rezone is requested to facilitate construction of a 4-story residential building with 16 units. If approved, the property is to be tied to a specific project by the development agreement. That agreement specifies the 4-story building not to exceed 45 feet in height with 16 one-bedroom units. Parking will be provided within the structure on the ground floor, and the applicant is actually proposing 2 parking spaces per unit with the use of lifts inside the garage. Parking for 16 bicycle spaces will also be provided. It's important to note that the 45 feet proposed is actually not an increase from the height allowed in the existing C2 or general commercial zone. So the rezone effectively allows 6 more units than the existing zone would accommodate. Beyond that, from a built form perspective, it's really not a departure from what you'd already expect in the existing zone. The proposed RO zone is allowed in the mixed use designation. As you saw in the packet, both staff and the commission found it to be appropriate in this specific location. The purpose of the RO zone is to provide a transition between more intense commercial areas and residential neighborhoods. It is more common in and around the downtown, but certainly applicable around a community activity center like this. As detailed in your packet, there are a host of comp plan policies that would support an increase in residential density here. The site is within walking distance of a variety of services, including a major grocery store. Transit is already in place along Vista and Overland, and the area is also identified for significant new development or redevelopment in the comprehensive plan. The rezone and the specific project required by the development agreement will add to the diversity of uses and housing types in the neighborhood. There was some public testimony in opposition at the Planning and Zoning Commission hearing. Residents expressed concern with density and the height of the building itself. We believe the concerns have been addressed through provisions included in the development agreement. The height, again, will not be increased beyond what is already allowed, and the density does allow only an additional 6 units. Again, all one-bedroom units and actually exceeding the required parking. So from our perspective, and as you could see from the commissions, it was hard to identify negative impacts on the surrounding neighborhood. So with that, as you can see in the packet, the commission did find the request to be consistent with the standards of approval for a rezone and unanimously recommended approval of the application. We are recommending you adopt their recommendation and approve the rezone this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So Cody, if we adopt the rezone tonight, the PUD, or excuse me, the development itself goes forward how?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, a design review would still be required.
Okay.
The development agreement will set kind of the basic parameters around development of the site. So if they were to want to increase density or perhaps height, they would have to start over with modifying this agreement.
Okay. And otherwise it meets all of the criteria in the zone.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, that's correct.
Thank you. Last question, if I could, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
And the development agreement does regulate the number of maximum number of units that will be allowed, which is under what the zone allows. Is that correct?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, that's correct.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton.
Yep, go ahead.
Elaine kind of already asked one of my questions a little bit, and it was about the maximum density, the 16 versus the 20. And this, I guess, is just more of a question in general. Since the development agreement lives on the property in the rezone, regardless of if the development goes forward, is it uncommon for having to be 16 or more, or 16 to 20, or is it always specifically tied to the particular development being proposed? Does that question make sense?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, I believe so. I mean, the development agreements will vary from site to site. Their real purpose is when just the general standards of the zone won't ensure compatibility or prevent negative impacts on the surrounding neighborhood. In this case, kind of the density, parking, and height that go along, potentially go along with the zone could introduce negative impacts. Thus I guess the cap on the upper end, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. I guess I was asking that question probably for similar reasons as Council President Clegg, that if they ended up finding out, throughout the process that they can get 17 units in there, are we holding them back from putting one more? But that does make sense. My second question is a little more straightforward. I did see the lifted car parking in there, which is pretty cool and pretty interesting. I didn't see anything about the bike parking, but I know that you just mentioned it, and I was curious if that was indoors in the garage as well, or if that was outside.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, right now they show accommodation for 16 spaces, which is the requirement. As I mentioned, they'll still have to go through design review, and through that process, we'll need to verify that at least 25% or 4 of those are covered spaces.
Right, perfect, thank you.
All right, looks like that's it for now. Ben, are you with us? Hi there.
Hi. Madam Mayor, members of City Council, Ben Semple, 1014 South LaPointe Street, Suite 3, Boise, Idaho, 83706. Yeah, I appreciate Cody's description of the project. He did a really great job describing what we want to do here. We are in agreement with all the staff report and conditions of approval. We did receive unanimous approval or unanimous support at planning and zoning, and approval of a small variance for balconies associated with it, including a statement from the commission that the project was essentially the perfect project for this location, that's adjacent to a community activity center, public transit, and multiple opportunities for education, employment, and other services. We're really excited about the project. We think it brings another housing type to the area. There is some single family residential to the east as well as to the west across Vista. But there's really not a smaller unit housing type in this immediate vicinity. There's some other opportunities for some other areas to develop in a similar way around here. The building kind of ties in to the, if you're familiar with the Gem Center for the Arts building that's up there, that's a kind of a unique mid-century concrete tilt up. This will utilize the insulated concrete form construction for our project, which is an extremely high sustainable project. It's a very efficient project as well. So we really look forward to this project in this area. With that, I would stand for some additional questions if you have any.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Ben. And while we haven't voted yet, thank you for bringing this project forward. I find it really unique. And as you said, a housing type that just doesn't exist in this area today. It looks like from the site plan that the two trees on the southwest corner are the existing ones. Am I reading that correctly? Are you going to leave those two?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, there is a large pine that is in the southwest corner. Currently, it's not in great health. It's kind of leaning. I personally had a discussion with the property owner to the south. There's a one-story commercial building there, and they're kind of concerned about that tree because of the lean that it has. So we do anticipate that being removed. There was a single-family residential home on this property a few years ago that got demolished, and it is not, the lot has not been upkept. So we're probably looking at a full removal of everything, but we are providing in excess of the code requirements for trees. If we go through design review that they identify an additional plant material that needs to go in, we would definitely be in support with that of that. We do have some mix of deciduous and evergreen trees that are going in here to hopefully mitigate for any removal.
Thank you. Second question, I'll jump the gun on Councilmember Halliburton. The bike parking, is it going to be a mix of indoor and outdoor, or mostly indoor?
Madam Mayor, City Council Member Clegg and Halliburton, yes, it'll be a mix of indoor and outdoor bike parking. We do have adequate room inside the parking garage, I'll call it, the first floor, to provide some bike parking. And then each unit, while they're one bedroom, they're pretty nicely sized, and they do have some other opportunities for bike parking within their unit. There's an elevator in the building as well as a stairwell, so it would be pretty easy to bring their bikes up to their unit if they wanted to.
Great, thank you.
Well, it looks like right now there are no other questions for you, Ben. With that, we don't have anybody signed up in advance and no neighborhood association of record. If anybody is on Zoom waiting to speak, please raise your hand now.
Madam Mayor, we do have one individual, and that is Steve Battistoni.
Great. Welcome, Steve. I didn't catch your last name.
He's currently muted, but I just asked him to unmute.
Steve, we're not hearing you, so if you're speaking, you're muted.
Madam Mayor, he is online.
Right, Steve, we're not hearing you. The clerk can see you in the, is it Zoom?
Yes, yes, Madam Mayor, he is on Zoom.
Can you message him? Can he message you back?
You can try.
Okay. Steve, if you can hear us, we're just saying if the clerk can make it so you can get her a message. We are not hearing you. Yep, we got that. While we're waiting, Cody, had you heard anything from Mr., I think it was Battistoni? Okay. Sir, I'm sorry. We are not, I'm hearing you. And it, and we saw the one message where you asked if we got this, but we haven't seen others.
Correct. He's not responding.
All right, I'm sorry, sir. We're gonna move on because, oh, here. You live at 1526. He believes this is way too tall for the area. Is that it? Was there more in there?
Yeah, there's quite a bit. Would you like me to read it?
Yeah, Steve, we will have our clerk read the, yes, we will have our clerk read the message that you've typed in because those of us in the chambers can't see the whole thing. I think probably our council members that are at home might be able to. But with that, we'll kind of keep an eye on time-wise, and Shar will read what you have written to us.
From Steve Battistoni, I would like to just say I live at 1526. I believe this is way too tall for the area, and I believe the parking is going to cause a lot of problems. I know they're under the density, but myself and other homeowners in the area, while I don't disagree with new building, just think this is too large for the area. We had asked for some pictures with the without actually showing next to the building that are in place and never saw those. That it would be my only concern is that I am on record. I think the park is going to be a problem. I know the proposed parking garage is our parking lifts, but I don't know if that's mandatory. I do not believe that it fits into the area. They're showing you pictures of the area before even that my house was built. And the community center, I don't see it being a pole to that been there for 2.5 or 2 and a year and a half, and I don't see anything going on there. I'm sorry, I used to talk to text, so my apologies, but thanks for the call, Mayor and Council. Give me a couple minutes here. I'm sorry about the technical difficulties.
Well, thank you, Steve, for typing that in or talking into the texting to type it in. We appreciate it. And I'm getting nods from council members also that are home that we've been able to both read and or hear the comments that you read into the record or that were read into the record for you. Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for typing that in, Steve. Appreciate it. All right. There's nobody else.
Madam Mayor, there is no one else.
There's nobody else. And so with that, before I close, oh wait, I guess technically this is a public hearing. So Mr. Semple, do you have anything else to say?
Madam Mayor, members of City Council, I did have the opportunity to discuss with Mr. Battistoni during the neighborhood meeting, as well as during planning and zoning. And I do know that he and one of his neighbors are concerned about the height of the building. Based on, I was actually able to talk to the Gem Center for the Arts building maintenance person who had the original blueprints from that building. And that building to the top of the parapet wall is 40 feet. We're under that to the pitched roof on our building. So we feel like it does fit to in the area. His home is across the street to the east and to the south slightly it's one of 3 homes that were built, I think, within the last 5 years or so. Along that street, single family homes that kind of create a transition from the commercial area along Vista and Overland there into the single family residential. We feel like the building that we're proposing, if it was to remain a commercially zoned property, you could build a building the same height with 0-foot setbacks in this area that wouldn't be a residential use. We feel like it's very appropriate here to create, again, continue that transition from a very commercial and highly traveled intersection of Vista and Overland into that single family residential zone. And we feel like also the site plan, the additional landscaping that's within there will help soften the impact, I guess, of the building to the neighborhood. So with that, again, I would stand for additional questions if there are any.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
So Ben, the property to the south has an attached sidewalk. I think I'm seeing an attached sidewalk on this building, but then there is some landscaping and trees between the sidewalk and the building. Am I reading the site plan correctly?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Clegg, you are correct. We're matching the sidewalk to the south, 5-foot attached. There's no sidewalk there. There's some dilapidated curb, so we will be replacing that. And then there's a 10-foot setback that will be fully landscaped with some small areas of concrete for the mailbox cluster, as well as some bike parking out front, and then a very prominent kind of street presence of the building, inviting with a small foyer to go into the stairwell and the elevator shaft, but there will be some extensive landscaping along the frontage there.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. And with that, looks like there are no other questions. So I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing.
Madam Mayor.
Yes.
I move approval of a CAR 20-11 rezone at 1511 South Robert Street of 0.23 acres from C2D to ROD with a development agreement.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
Madam Mayor.
Discussion, yeah.
Thank you. Just to, I think, try to address Mr. Battisoni's concerns. I certainly appreciate them. I actually remember when those houses got approved. I would note that they're south of this building, and so the building, even though it will be taller than theirs, will not be, should not interfere with most of the light that they're getting today, because that light in our latitude comes from the south and the west. I'd also note that, as the applicant stated, the Gem Arts building is about the same distance away to the southeast, and it is the same height or higher. This is a housing type that is desperately needed. It's a number of units that can well serve this activity center. And with that, I'm very supportive of approving this project.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
thank you. I was just recollecting when Councilmember Sanchez and I were very first on council. I believe one of the neighboring townhouse projects was our first land use application that was before us. And I remember at that time thinking about how perfect a place this corner is for infill residential because of its proximity to schools and its proximity to employment and commercial centers. I mean, I could envision living in this area and really not having to drive anywhere, and unless I chose to work far away. So I think it's just a really great place for infill. There's just tons of opportunity around there. I know a few larger growing companies that have headquartered on adjacent parcels. So I look forward to the opportunity that residents are given by living here, and thank the developer for bringing this.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, just really quick. I do think that this is exciting, it being in a community activity center and how much stuff is popping up around that area. I think of Bikes and Beans, the German restaurants that's right there. so many things. I do think that I always have some concerns over pedestrian areas where, Vista and Overland are running through the middle of them. And so I hope that that's something, that bit by bit we can find ways to make that even more pedestrian and bicycle friendly. But it's an exciting thing to go into that area, and some innovative stuff going on with the building. So again, hats off to the developer for doing something really interesting with that piece of property, and also kind of recognizing some of the other architecture in the area.
Thanks. All right. It looks like everybody's had their say. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Sanchez,
Yes.
Thompson,
Yes.
Woodings,
Yes.
Agent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Thanks, Ben. Nice to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you too.
Have a great night. All right, next up, we've got Mark Lavin here in person to present the First Amendment to the West Side Urban Renewal Plan.
Madam Mayor and City Council, good evening. We have, as you mentioned, we have the First Amendment to the Urban Renewal Plan for the West Side Downtown Urban Renewal District. Representing CCDC tonight, we have Matt Edmonds, we have Karen Kay with SB Friedman on the phone, and we have Megan Sullivan Conrad with Edelman Burke. A few key dates just to review. In June of 2019, City Council approved the resolution adopting the eligibility study for the First Amendment and directing CCDC to prepare the plan. In September of 2020, CCDC adopted the First Amendment and transmitted it to the City of Boise. In October of 2020, staff and Planning and Zoning Commission found the First Amendment to be in conformance with Blueprint Boise and is recommending the same to City Council. In addition to this public hearing, we are also proposing to have the first reading of the ordinance tonight. So thank you. Matt?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. I'm Matt Edmond with Capital C Development Corporation. With me this evening are Megan Sullivan Conrad with Edelman Burke, as well as Karen Kay of SB Friedman, who's joining us remotely. This is a small but important geographical adjustment to the existing West Side Downtown Urban Renewal District to enable CCDC to assist the city and other stakeholders in implementing some important mobility infrastructure and other potential improvements. The amendment allows CCDC to assist with 2 bicycle mobility projects, as well as a historic preservation project and potential reinvestment in important community services. This is what the amendment is about: completing a couple of very important capital projects just outside of the original urban renewal district boundary. This amendment allows CCDC to get to work. It does not approve the contemplated projects. Individual approvals are needed for each contemplated project when the time comes. Next, I'll just quickly review the plan amendment elements, boundary change area, and some key proposed projects. So per Idaho code, a plan amendment must include 8 items: total assessed valuation of the base assessment roll, a list of proposed public works, an economic feasibility study, which Karen will be going over, an estimated project cost, a fiscal impact statement, methods of financing those project costs, termination date, and disposition or retention of any agency assets upon termination. So here's the original West Side District outlined in black, as well as the proposed amendment area hashed and shaded green. The proposed addition is 14.1 acres, which is below the 10% statutory limit, and it would bring the total district size to 157.5 acres. Zooming in on that, the additional area to be added to the district consists of 2 nodes. The west node, located around the Boise High campus on the downtown Y, and the east node includes the historic Carnegie Library, the First Church of Christ Scientist, and the old bank of the northeast corner of 8th and State, as well as the full width of the 8th Street right-of-way up to Franklin. In total, it adds 8 parcels of West Side Downtown District, 6 of which are exempt and 2 are taxable. Carnaby Library and the Old Bank. The reason we started this amendment is because the city and other stakeholders expressed a desire for CCDC assistance in the area. We work with stakeholders that included the Ada County Highway District, the City of Boise, the Boise School District, the YMCA, and other area property owners to understand improvements contemplated in the area and how CCDC could potentially assist. The planned projects relate primarily to multimodal transportation connectivity downtown. It's the 11th Street Bikeway, envisioned to improve the entire street for bikes, basically from the Boise River to Camel's Back Park. This project would connect through the Boise High campus, so special considerations are in order here. For the east node, we've been doing some outreach and envisioned streetscapes, as well as bike improvements for 8th Street as well that would extend. Right now, we've got a contraflow bike lane that we're being built on 8th Street between Bannock and State, and this would extend that to the north conceptually. So for both nodes, there are opportunities both in and out in these areas for additional development, private investment, and public partnership. It could help some transformative multi-block redevelopment ambitions in the 10th and State area, and also offers the ability to assist via our participation program in the North 8th Street area. And so the proposed West Side Plan Amendment includes an economic feasibility study, which Karen will be going over briefly. The plan amendment, the projects have been coordinated somewhat with stakeholders. We will continue to do so. There is no base reset. In 2016 plans, post 2016 potentially have a base reset with a plan amendment. This one was adopted in 2001, so that does not apply to this. It does not change the termination date. This district would still sunset in 2026. And also includes maps and legal description. With that, I will hand it off to Karen, who should be with us remotely, and advance the slides at her request.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Matt. As Matt mentioned, my name is Karen Kay. I'm with SB Friedman Development Advisors. We are planners who specialize in economic development in Chicago, Illinois. We've worked with CCDC for a number of years now on different urban renewal district eligibility and feasibility studies. And as he mentioned, urban renewal districts always require feasibility studies to really outline project costs and be transparent upfront about what project cost districts will fund, and then identify the revenues available to fund those project costs at the front of the district. Because this is an amendment today, when we were going through the feasibility study process, we had to first start by looking back at the historic revenues and historic project costs. I'll be brief in all of these numbers, but to date, the district has collected about $30 million in historic revenue. The vast majority of those revenues are through incremental property taxes, and there were about $1 million in other revenues available or collected through the district over the last 20 years. On the historic project cost side, there were about $25 million in historic project costs to date. About 18 million of those were capital project costs, and then the other costs were associated with operation costs, and then some financing related costs. That leaves us with about $5 million in cumulative fund balance as of fiscal year 2019 that will carry forward into the feasibility study exercise that we're about to analyze. So if you flip to the next slide, in addition to the $5 million in cumulative fund balance, moving forward through the life of the district, we identified the projected revenues available to fund project costs through 2026. You can see based on the green bars here that the vast majority of revenues anticipated through the end of the district are still expected to be projected incremental property tax revenues. That's the primary mechanism for funding projects through urban renewal districts. The yellow bars identify the other revenues available to the district identified within the feasibility study. They include office lease revenues, interest on a cumulative fund balance, and then also projected transfers that we've included within this feasibility study. And those are non-binding transfers, simply anticipated within the plan, but would need to actually occur within those following years. And they're anticipated with both the Ada County Highway District and the Boise School District. City of Boise, I apologize. So that leads us to assume or to project approximately 40 million in revenues through the life of the district. And then if you flip to the following slide, we then worked with CCDC to identify the projected costs through the life of the district as well. And we leaned heavily on the CCDC capital improvement plan that was recently passed to identify these specific project costs to include within the plan. Again, the vast majority of these projected costs are capital costs, about $30 million in capital costs that break down into 5 primary categories. As Matt mentioned, the amendment area has 3 specific costs that were included within the feasibility study, capital costs, all of which had to do with streetscaping and public realm improvements. And then there are also ongoing operation costs and then bond costs included within the plan, totaling about $41 million in projected costs across the whole plan. So if you flip to the last slide that I'll cover, this feasibility study really pairs up those projected revenues against the projected costs, and then also adds in the historic revenues and costs and shows that the projected revenues and project costs would be sufficient to match one another and would leave about $3 million in a cumulative fund balance, assuming all assumptions within the plan are realized. If they were realized in 2026, any surplus cash would revert back to the local taxing bodies at the district expiration. So with that, I will pass it back to the council chambers where Megan will pick up.
Thank you. Oh, pardon me.
Madam Mayor, one question while we're still on those slides, if that's okay.
Sure.
The projected costs and projected revenues are for the caption says amended district. So this is assuming the expansion, including those, I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 taxable parcels, and then including the expenses associated with whatever will occur in the amended space.
Correct, and thank you for that question. There are about $14,000 in revenue, so a really small revenue potential driven by the amendment area that Matt outlined. And then on the cost side, there's about $2.5 million in projected costs that fall within those 3 projects that we've identified.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members, Megan Conrad, Elam and Burke, Boise, Idaho. Just a quick few slides remaining. I know there's not much time. I'm going the wrong way. Okay. This, again, is the timeline that this plan has traveled. I just specifically wanted to call out that this public hearing was noticed twice in the Idaho Statesman. And the affected taxing districts did get notice of the plan and the notice itself more than 30 days in advance of this public hearing. These are the affected taxing districts. That is a term of art. These are the taxing districts that overlay this proposed amended area boundary. Just quickly wanted to point out there was a change in Idaho law effective July 1st, 2020 that changed the allocation with how revenue allocations from the highway district flow to between the agency and the highway district. As of now, starting effective July 1st, 2020 and moving forward, and it would only impact this amended area. Those revenues generated from the increment in the amended area would flow to ACHD unless there's an agreement reached between the agency and ACHD.
30-second warning.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
It was a 30-second warning. that you-
Oh, gotcha. You can go a
Thank
little
you.
longer if you need it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Quickly, there's 2 other tests that a plan amendment has to satisfy. One is the 10% valuation limitation. The collective base assessment rolls of all the existing project areas plus the amended area cannot exceed 10% of the assessed taxable value of the entire city. We had available at the time this plan was prepared the January 1st, 2020 values of base assessment rolls, but we did use the 2019 values for the total taxable value of the city. So it was a more conservative analysis, and still it's a 3% result. So there is still capacity. There's also a 10% geographic limitation that applies to expansion of a revenue allocation area. It can be expanded after July 1st, 2011. It can only be expanded one time and can only increase up to 10% of the existing revenue allocation area. The numbers reflect that this is a 9.8% change, and so that test has been satisfied as well. Final slide sets forth the next steps. Tonight is the time set for the public hearing as noticed. Also, should the council like to move this forward, the first reading of the ordinance 45-20 may occur. The second reading could then be scheduled for the 17th, and then December 1st could be the third reading. There's a number of steps that need to occur on or before December 31st, 2020 for this amendment to be effective retroactive to January 1st, 2020, including publication of the ordinance summary, recordation of both the ordinance and separately the map and the legal, and then an additional round of transmittals to the affected taxing districts and then county and state officials. So with that, happy to stand for questions.
Madam Mayor, this is TJ.
Yes, go ahead.
Thanks. I have a question, might be for Matt, I'm not sure. Can you summarize the input you've received to date regarding these amendments from the public and otherwise? Just summarize how positive, negative.
Madam Mayor, Councilman Halliburton, are you talking about the projects?
Yes, this is Councilmember Thompson, but we do sound similar. Yeah, just to date, regarding the potential changes to the boundaries and what you've heard to date.
So, yeah, we've spoken with, the Boise School District, the Ada County Highway District, City of Boise staff, the Y, they've all been fairly supportive of it, as well as the architects that are working on the Carnegie Library project. 8th Street there, we're in very early conceptual stages, but 11th Street, there's been a number of public outreach efforts there, both with the ACHD projects, or project to the north as well as south of Myrtle. But we've also just wrapped up presentations to the ACHD Commission as well as the CCDC board for 11th Street with the raised bike lanes on it.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Go ahead.
if I can put a sharper point on Councilman Thompson's questions, has anybody reached out to you and said this is a terrible idea for some particular reason?
Madam Mayor, Councilman Pageant, nobody's reached out to me, and the lead project manager of it, and he did not relay any of that to me. So no, we haven't heard any pushback. I mean, it's, as Karen said, we're talking, $15,000 of tax revenue, really pretty small in the grand scheme of things. These are projects. The 11th Street Bikeway project has been one that's been discussed for years, since I was at the Highway District years ago. So no, I haven't heard anything, and I don't believe there's been any significant opposition.
Thank you.
Other? Nope. All right. It looks like there are no further questions. We had nobody signed up for this. Has anybody raised their hands?
Madam Mayor, there is no one online for
Okay.
this item.
And with that, you can see the next steps here. There's nobody online to testify, nobody else in the room here to testify, correct? Just for the record to reflect that. And if there are no further questions for staff or CCDC, I'll go ahead and close this hearing.
Madam Mayor,
Mhm.
this is an amendment that has been underway for some time. The projects associated with it are ones that have been long discussed with two primary agencies that will be impacted by them, the school district and ACHD. Both the 8th Street bicycle improvements and the improvements, extension of the improvements that are going on today, as well as the 11th Street Bikeway. With that, I see no reason not to move this forward. And with that, would ask unanimous consent that ORD 4520 be read by number and title only for the first time and read and filed for the second reading calendar.
Second.
Was unanimous consent.
That's what I thought. Okay. Without objection?
ORD 45-20, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Boise City, Idaho, approving the First Amendment to the Urban Renewal Plan West Side Downtown Urban Renewal Project, which First Amendment seeks to annex certain parcels to the existing West Side project area, which First Amendment includes revenue allocation financing provisions, authorizing the city clerk to transmit a copy of this ordinance and other required information to county and state officials and other taxing entities, providing severability, approving the summary of the ordinance, and providing an effective date.
All right, and with that, we will then, as we saw on the piece on the schedule, we'll see this for a second and third reading in the next couple weeks. Thank you very much. All right, and if there's nothing further to come before council,
I move we adjourn.
Second.
we have a motion, a second. Clerk, will you call the roll? Oh, wait, no, we don't need to do that. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
See ya.